Okay, ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, here we go again, another video in relation to my book, A Journey to the Self. Now, some long-term viewers may be a little bit tired of this, but do you know, my current viewership is consisting of 76% new viewers. And so what that looks like is about 4,500 new viewers per month and only 500 existing viewers. So I have to make certain considerations, don't I, about this channel if I want it to go forward. Some of you existing viewers who have been viewing the channel for a long time may feel it's a bit stagnant, but at the end of the day, this book is my core philosophy. This book is 14 years of my spiritual journey. This book is my life to date, basically to date. And so it's my greatest and only work in literature. And so I'm going to keep bringing it to the attention of my viewers because there's a lot of really, really powerful stuff that people on the spiritual journey would really benefit from knowing. There's a whole array of stuff in this book pertaining to what it is to be a human being. So today I'm going to be listening to a dialogue on Notebook LM, the Google AI, and they do a very good job of it. And this particular chapter is chapter number 8, and it's in relation to meditation. Meditation, ladies and gentlemen, is the core essence of your spiritual practice. Those of you who are not meditating, you are not on the spiritual journey. Maybe you're just watching my videos for fun, but you're not serious about what I am speaking about and what I've been speaking about for these past 14 years. And so I get it that you could find it tedious and unimportant. But if you were really, truly on the spiritual path, if you were really on a journey to the self, then this book would be very important and valuable to you. So let's see what AI has to say. If I can actually get this to move out of the way. Oh, for goodness sakes. No, it appears I can't. There we go.
We spend a massive portion of our lives, trying to upgrade ourselves,
Oh, constantly.
right? We download these productivity apps, we optimize our morning routines, we listen to life hack gurus telling us how to squeeze 5 more minutes out of our lunch breaks.
Which is exhausting just to think about.
It really is. It feels like we're constantly trying to install new software into a computer that is already overheating. Like it's
Yeah.
running entirely on default settings and desperately in need of a reboot.
Yeah, total hard reset.
Exactly. So what if the ultimate upgrade doesn't require a new app or a complicated schedule or, buying a retreat ticket to Bali, but simply shutting the system down entirely?
That is the big question.
It is. And today, our mission is to explore a really profound, refreshingly blunt take on how to do exactly that. We're diving into chapter 8 of Aaron Berry's book, A Journey to the Self.
A fantastic chapter.
Yes, specifically focusing on what he calls the mystical bliss of a still mind. We're going to strip away all the mystical fluff that usually surrounds meditation and just look at it simply as a portal to your true self.
Hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this because for a lot of people listening right now, just the word meditation brings up an enormous amount of baggage.
Oh, it absolutely carries baggage. I mean, when you hear the word, you likely picture esoteric rituals or very specific breathing patterns or just the sense that you have to be somehow wholly or fundamentally different to even attempt it.
Right, like you have to be enlightened already just to start.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is Barry's complete rejection of that aesthetic performance. I mean, he describes himself as a very no-nonsense person
Yeah,
who was instantly turned off by the gimmickry that's often associated with the practice.
because I always thought you had to sit in a very specific way to get any benefit at all. Like you see the tutorials with someone in a perfect lotus position, legs impossibly twisted,
Yeah.
and they're holding their fingers together in that inverted pinch of salt pose.
Mudra, yeah.
Right, a mudra.
Yeah.
But Barry mentions that specific pose and seems pretty skeptical of its necessity for, the average person.
Well, those mudras and postures do have historical and symbolic significance in various Eastern traditions, right? They were developed for specific energetic or focus-based reasons within those contexts.
Okay.
But Barry's realization, after 14 years of practicing for hours a day, mind you, is that they are not the mechanical prerequisite for meditation to work. The only actual requirement, like the core function of the practice, is simply to quiet the mind.
That's it. Just quiet the mind.
That's it.
That-
He points out that seeing someone twisted into a pretzel sells books and lifestyle brands a lot better than showing someone just, sitting normally in a chair.
Wow. Which means you can do it anywhere.
Anywhere.
You don't need a dedicated meditation cushion or a silent ashram. You can do it on a crowded airplane. You can do it walking in the woods. You can do it staring blankly at a smudge on your living room wall. And I think that's a huge relief for anyone listening who struggles with productivity guilt.
Yeah.
Because we're so conditioned to think that if we aren't actively producing something, we're wasting time.
Oh, absolutely.
I kind of like to think of it not as climbing some mystical holy mountain, but just putting your brain in airplane mode.
Yeah.
You just switch off the incoming signals for a minute.
That's a great way to put it. And what's fascinating here is how Barry identifies why that airplane mode feels so incredibly difficult and even like transgressive for us.
Yeah, why is it so hard?
Well, he points out a massive cultural barrier that we rarely acknowledge. Western society has actively indoctrinated its citizens to be, in his words, obedient little workhorses.
Oof. Obedient little workhorses.
Right. From a very young age, we are steered away from the internal, the quiet, the metaphysical, and pushed relentlessly toward the busy, the tangible, and the productive.
Because if you're sitting down and doing absolutely nothing, you aren't buying anything.
Nope.
You aren't producing anything, and you aren't feeding the economic machine. Sitting still is almost seen as an act of rebellion.
It really is. It's a direct threat to that productivity-obsessed doctrine we're all steeped in. So by stripping away the need for special robes or incense and framing the resistance we feel as a cultural byproduct rather than a personal failure, Barry democratizes the practice entirely.
Which is so empowering.
He gives you permission to just sit exactly as you are and begin the work of quieting the noise without feeling like you're, failing a spiritual test.
But the reality of actually quieting that noise is kind of a wild ride, isn't it? I mean, Barry shares his early attempts at this, and he makes it clear it wasn't instant sunshine and rainbows.
No, definitely not.
When he first started getting the hang of shutting down that constant inner chatter, he described the feeling of pure awareness without his ego as feeling uncannily spooky.
Spooky is a fantastic word to describe that threshold because you're stepping into a vastness that you have never consciously occupied before. Think about it. Your entire life, every waking moment, has been narrated by this persistent voice in your head. It judges, it plans, it worries.
Mine definitely worries.
Right. And suddenly that voice stops, but your consciousness remains. It feels infinite and it can be quite unnerving initially because you lose your usual boundaries.
So to help settle that unnerving feeling and give his mind something to do, he adopted a mantra. He used a two-syllable word, Shyam, which he says was inspired by the Transcendental Meditation movement.
Yes, TM.
Right, and for those who don't know, Transcendental Meditation, or TM, was popularized by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Beatles in the 60s, and it essentially uses a personalized mantra to help you transcend conscious thought.
Exactly.
But I have to ask about the mechanics of this. He adopts this meaningless two-syllable sound. How does repeating a word over and over actually short-circuit the brain?
Well, that goes to the very heart of how the ego functions. The ego is fundamentally a sorting machine. It desperately wants to categorize, file, and analyze data. So when you feed it a meaningless sound like Shyam over and over, you're essentially giving the machine an impossible task. It can't file it as a memory, it can't analyze it as a threat, and it can't use it to plan for the future.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, you're occupying the ego's processing power with a blank file. So eventually, the sorting software just crashes or pauses, leaving you in a state of alert silence.
That makes so much sense. It's like handing a frantic administrative assistant a blank piece of paper to file over and over until they finally just give up and sit down.
That is exactly what it's like.
So he's using this mantra, he's practicing for hours a day, and then we get to this breakthrough moment that he literally calls his meditation cherry popping story.
I love that phrase.
And here's where it gets really interesting because the way it happens is so brilliantly anticlimactic.
It really is. The setting he describes is beautiful, though. He's living in Bulgaria, sitting on a rock by the Black Sea, enjoying the summer sun and listening to the rhythmic slapping of the waves against the quay.
Sounds perfect.
And he's just repeating his mantra, doing his usual routine.
And then his mind just pops.
Yeah.
That's his word for it. It wasn't a thunderclap from the heavens. He describes it as a gentle poo.
Just a little pop.
Yeah. And suddenly, complete and absolute emptiness. He had finally hit the bottom of the pool. And this is the part I find so funny and relatable. He's sitting there in this profound, unprecedented emptiness, and he waits a few minutes.
Just waiting for the show.
Yes, he is fully expecting the cinematic spiritual fireworks. He's expecting angels to descend or this massive wave of profound cosmic love to wash over him, because that's what everyone in the YouTube tutorials talks about.
And when none of that cinematic spiritual drama happens, his impatience kicks in.
Right. He literally says in his mind, "Hello, is there anyone there?" He gets annoyed that the emptiness is just empty.
Which is such a deeply human, deeply revealing moment. I mean, if we look closely at that, hello.
What is actually happening
What
there?
is happening? That impatience, that demand for a show is simply the ego trying to reassert itself. Think about the last time you were stuck in a doctor's waiting room without your smartphone.
Oh, the worst.
Right. That immediate itch, that low-level panic to check your email or read a magazine, that is your ego doing exactly what Barry's did on that rock.
Ah, I see.
The ego has been quieted, a new vast space has opened up, and the ego panics because there is nothing for it to do in that space. So it tries to jump back into the driver's seat by manufacturing a complaint. Like, this is boring. Where are the angels?
The ego just couldn't stand being out of a job even for 5 minutes on a rock in Bulgaria.
Exactly.
But the great revelation he pulls from this, and this is really the turning point for his entire practice, is that the silence itself is the reward.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't sitting there waiting for a mystical light show.
No.
The profound relief is just having a break from the constant, exhausting narration. He says his thoughts started passing by like ships in the night without causing any wake. No emotional turbulence, just passing ships.
That realization is the key that unlocks the rest of his journey. Because once he understands that the silence is the goal, he has to examine what was making all the noise in the first place.
Which is the ego.
Right. To understand why that silence is so powerful, we really have to look under the hood at what this ego actually is and why it's so exhausting to be chained to it all the time.
Well, Barry uses some technological analogies in this chapter that I found really helpful, but I want to make sure I fully grasp them. He compares the ego to a computer motherboard.
Yes.
He says it starts out blank when we were born, and then it archives all of our life experiences into folders to run our physiological computer on autopilot.
The motherboard analogy is very precise. The ego acts as a background processing system. It's highly useful for boring, repetitive tasks.
Like what?
Well, think about driving your usual route to work. You don't have to consciously calculate every single turn, pedal press, or evaluate the meaning of a red light.
Right, you just kind of zone out and arrive.
Yeah, exactly. The motherboard has a folder for driving to work, and it runs that program so your conscious mind can think about other things. But Barry warns that if we lack self-awareness, if we never step outside of that automated system, we essentially become automated automatons.
We just run the same programmed responses to the same stimuli day in and day out.
Reacting to our partners, our jobs, and our challenges based on outdated files stored in the motherboard.
Okay, but I want to push back on this for a second, because the ego gets a really bad rap in spiritual circles, almost like it's an enemy you have to destroy. But based on this analogy, it isn't necessarily evil, right? It's just a rigid piece of software that we let run on default for way too long.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're absolutely correct. The ego is not an evil demon to be vanquished. It's a critical survival tool.
Okay.
Its primary job, first and foremost, is your protection and survival in the physical world. It's constantly scanning for threats, categorizing things as good or bad, safe or dangerous based on past data.
So that's why it's so noisy.
That is why it's so loud and demanding. It is fear-based programming designed to keep you alive. You don't want to destroy the motherboard. You just don't want it making every single decision for you, especially when you aren't actually in physical danger.
That makes total sense.
Okay.
It's like a hyper-vigilant bodyguard that won't let you relax at a dinner party because it thinks the waiter might be an assassin.
Perfect analogy.
And Barry takes his computer analogy one step further, which I found fascinating. He says the ego is essentially the computer screen, the interface.
Right.
And cosmic consciousness, or God, or the universe, whatever you want to call the infinite reality, is the internet itself. It's this vast, incomprehensible ocean of binary code.
Yes.
The computer screen, your ego, takes all that infinite code and translates it into bite-sized, manageable pictures and folders so you can navigate a tiny sliver of reality without your brain exploding.
Because the screen is necessary to interact with the physical data of the world, right? But the screen is not the whole internet. The problem is we spend our entire lives staring at the interface, believing that the screen is the entirety of reality.
We think our desktop is all there is.
Exactly. What meditation does, through that mechanism of crashing the sorting software with a mantra, is allow you to temporarily step away from the screen. When your mind becomes profoundly still, you set aside that default operating system.
Wow.
And when you set aside the ego, you also set aside all the fear, all the anxiety, and all the suffering that the ego generates to protect you.
You just unplug the monitor for a minute.
You step into the void beyond the interface. The Buddhists call it nirvana. Other traditions call it the kingdom of God. It is a space entirely free of the human experience of suffering. There's actually a beautiful quote from the 13th century poet Rumi that Barry includes in this chapter, which perfectly encapsulates this concept.
Oh, I know the one.
He says, "Silence is the language of God. All else is a poor translation."
Silence is the language of God. All else is a poor translation. That just gives me chills because it implies that all our frantic thinking, our worrying, our obsessive planning, it's all just a really clunky, inaccurate translation of reality through that computer screen.
It is, and once you experience that true silent reality, even briefly, it fundamentally changes how you interact with the screen when you inevitably have to plug the monitor back in.
You aren't so easily fooled by the interface anymore.
Exactly.
Which brings up the crucial question of causality. You've unplugged the monitor, you've experienced the silence on the rock by the Black Sea, but eventually you have to get up and go buy groceries.
Right. Life goes on.
How does this practice of stepping away from the screen change the way you actually live your daily life? Barry quotes the legendary filmmaker David Lynch here to explain it, and it provides such a great visual.
It's one of my favorite explanations. Lynch proposes that if you have a golf ball-sized consciousness, then when you read a book, you only have a golf ball-sized understanding of it.
Makes sense.
When you look out a window, you only have a golf ball-sized awareness of the view. Your entire experience of life is restricted to the size of that golf ball. It's like trying to view the entire world through a tiny keyhole.
That sounds miserable.
But if you can expand that consciousness, which is the direct result of regularly silencing the ego and stepping away from the keyhole, then everything expands. You open the door, your understanding expands, your awareness expands, your inner happiness expands.
And this expansion leads Barry to a massive eureka moment regarding a word we use every day. I have to say, this is an ultimate aha moment that you are absolutely going to want to take to your next dinner party to sound incredibly smart.
Oh, definitely.
It's about the word enthusiasm.
Uh-huh.
So Barry had previously learned the meaning of the word entheogen, which refers to psychedelic plant medicines often used in spiritual contexts to induce a transcendent state.
Right.
The root of that word means to be with God. But then he realizes that the word enthusiasm shares that exact same root.
Yeah.
Entheos. Enthusiasm literally translates to God within.
It's a stunning linguistic connection that completely shifts how we view joy. I mean, in our modern context, to be enthusiastic usually just means like being peppy or showing high energy in a corporate meeting.
Yeah, forced positivity.
Exactly. But etymologically and spiritually, when you are truly enthusiastic about something, you are fully present. The monkey chatter of the ego has vanished because you are utterly captivated by the moment. You're free from suffering, and you are actively expressing the divine within you.
What does this all mean? It means joy isn't just a fleeting emotion or a good mood. It's a state of deep spiritual connection.
Yes.
And we see the ultimate practical result of this in how Barry starts experiencing the physical world after years of maintaining this practice. His perception of tiny details becomes absolutely astounding.
It's beautiful to
He
read.
talks about walking down the street and becoming utterly mesmerized by the wind blowing discarded wrappers and trash around in the corner of a building.
It sounds utterly absurd to the ego, doesn't it? To be captivated by street trash.
It does. I have to be honest, if I saw a guy standing on the sidewalk, completely mesmerized by a blowing wrapper, my first thought wouldn't be, oh, he's connected to the divine. My ego would label him crazy.
Sure, most people would.
So how do we distinguish between genuine spiritual enthusiasm
Yeah.
and just, spacing out or dissociating?
Well, this raises an important question about the difference between absence and presence. When you're spacing out, your ego is still running. It has just retreated into a fantasy or a memory to avoid the present moment. You are absent.
Okay, that makes sense.
What Barry is describing is hyper-presence. Because his consciousness has expanded beyond the golf ball, he doesn't just see a category labeled litter. He sees a synchronized waltz.
Or waltz of trash.
Yeah. He describes the crisp packets and leaves sitting out a dance until the wind changes rhythm, their specific song comes on, and then a paper cup joins in.
Wow.
He is finding profound, tear-inducing beauty in the physical mechanics of discarded objects because he is fully, entirely present to witness them.
And we miss the waltz because we're staring at our internal computer screen, worrying about a folder we filed wrong 5 years ago.
Or stressing about an email we have to write tomorrow. Exactly.
We filter out the magic in favor of efficiency and threat detection.
Yes, we do.
Meditation, the way Barry presents it, is simply the practice of lifting your eyes from the screen so you can actually see the dance.
It really is that simple.
But to bring it all together, what we've learned from Aaron Barry's deep dive into the self is that meditation is not a performance art. It's not about twisting your legs into a pretzel, holding a mudra, or waiting for angels to descend on a rock in Bulgaria.
Definitely not.
It's a highly practical, incredibly profound mechanism to crash the sorting software of your ego. It puts the interface on standby, allowing you to bypass your fear-based programming and access a profound, enthusiastic connection to the present moment.
It is the shift from being an automated machine running on past data to being a fully present participant in the reality unfolding around you right now. You stop looking through the keyhole and finally open the door.
So the next time you feel completely overwhelmed by the hustle, by the endless demands of the world, or by the sheer volume of your own thoughts, remember that you have permission to just stop.
Just stop.
You don't need a special pillow or a perfect posture. You can just sit, close your eyes, put the brain in airplane mode, and let your thoughts pass by like ships in the night. The silence is there, waiting for you to notice it. I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today as you go about your routine. If the word enthusiasm literally means having the divine within you, if true joy is the ultimate indicator of being deeply connected to the present moment, what does it say about the things in your life that you are currently forcing yourself to do without a single shred of joy?
That's a tough question.
Are you actively choosing those things, or are you just letting your motherboard run on default? Are you the one driving, or are you just a passenger in an operating system that you forgot how to switch off? Take a look at your screen today and see if you can catch a glimpse of the waltz happening just outside the window. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
The waltz that was being spoken about here was when I observed a bunch of leaves, a paper cup, and a crisp packet being spun around the vortex. And as I observed them, as the wind picked up and then dissipated, the larger items would sit to the side of the gentle waltz, which was continuing. So when there was a gentle wind, the leaves, the lighter particles, they would be spinning around, dancing at varying rates. When the wind picked up and gained more momentum, then the crisp packet would be drawn into the vortex and that would join in the waltz. And then when the wind got even stronger. The paper cup, which was more heavy and cumbersome, that got sucked into the vortex as well, and they're all spinning around in this beautiful cosmic spiral of life dance. When the wind started to slow down and the vortex lost some of its energy, the paper cup was the first to sit out the waltz, and then the crisp packet was the second, and then when the wind finally abated and was almost completely gone, many of the larger leaves, they were sitting at the outside of this tiny little vortex, which was still continuing. As above, so below, people. When we look into, let's say, a bath or a sink, when the water's going down the plug hole, when we look at a spiral galaxy, when we look into the face of a sunflower, when we look at a snail shell swirl, when we look at a pine cone, when we see the Fibonacci golden ratio of the spiral in it, it's everywhere in nature. And it's absolutely remarkable when we observe this. And so just to observe this spiral of life spinning in a small enclosed area on a windy day, using a crisp packet, a paper cup and some leaves to simulate the planets flying around a star and stars flying around a black hole in the center of a vortex. Incredible, people. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I can't really say anymore. If it's not moving you, if it's not touching you, I can't say anymore.